thank you for our board members and our superintendent, Mr. Conrad, for coming. So we're just going to open this up with them all introducing themselves first. So,
So I'm Mark Conrad, Superintendent of Schools.
I'm Dottie Oden. I'm on the school board. I'm chair of the Human Resources Committee, and I'm a retired teacher here in Nashville.
I'm Sandra Ziem. I'm the new chair of the board, and I've been on the board 10 years. So when you get your darts, you can throw them at me.
Howard Kaufman, I'm new to the board. I'm also the clerk, which means I get to take those notes in those meetings. I'm also on the policy committee, which curious to, if you ever have input, we'd like to get input from everybody. And it was also a substitute here in the Nashville School District, so maybe there's somebody who might recognize me probably from one of the middle schools.
I'm Doris Hohensee. I'm new to the board. I'm on policy and also curriculum and evaluation. So this is a very important issue that we're here to listen to today.
we're just going to have a question and answer session. So if anyone wants to speak, then they can raise their hand. And you guys can come down and speak, or you can stand up where you are. Oh yeah, and you can grab the microphone as well.
Hello, my name is Sam McIntyre. I'm president of the Student Senate. Thank you guys all for coming out today. No applause, no applause. Talk into the mic. Okay. Yes.
How many of you are from the Senate?
Not the same.
No.
Do you always have this good a crowd?
We have a pretty good crowd usually. This is extra good today. They came out just for you.
I hope that's not a bad sign.
So I'm a senior. I've kind of made it over the hump as far as college applications, but I know that a lot of our sophomores and juniors have a lot of concerns coming up with our new grading scale, how colleges are going to be receptive to that. And I think we've heard that guidance and the school board have been talking to a lot of different schools and are sending out that special letter explaining our new grading system, but I think a lot of us are still uncomfortable with how those grades will be received as opposed to the traditional 100-point scale.
So can I see a show of hands? How many are in favor of it and how many are opposed
To what?
to the 100-point scale?
How many are in favor of the 100-point scale?
How many would like to go back to the 100-point?
All right.
And how many are happy where you are and don't want to go back?
So if we walked away with a conclusion that the folks that came here today were overwhelmingly in favor of going back to 100, you guys are not going to say we walked away with the wrong conclusion, right? Okay, it's sometimes important to check, okay? Just want to be clear, because that's the impression we're walking away right now we have.
Maybe I can talk for just a minute, and I don't want to talk long because we're really here to listen to you. Let me say, first and foremost, I've been so impressed with the quality and the thoughtfulness of all of you and so many other students who have been engaged in this process over time. You've really given this a lot of thought, and there's a lot of depth to the conversation, and it makes me very proud to be a superintendent in a school and in a school system that has students like yourselves. It's a very mature discussion. We have to recognize we're changing a grading system that's been in place since the turn of the last century, right? Over 100 years. And one of the reasons I supported the changes is our schools really need to adapt to a different mission. So back in the 50s and the 60s, back when some of us were in school, the mission of school systems were to determine those students who might be college bound. Large numbers of students dropped out, and many students could get a good job without a high school education. I look at both of my parents like that. it's different today. And as I go around the state and I talk to employers, what they're saying to me is our students are graduating, which we're doing a very good job graduating students, but they don't have the skill sets to be successful, whether it's in college. I mean, 50% of college students drop out, or in careers. I talk to manufacturers who will say our students are coming out of our schools and they're not ready for work. And so for me, it's been about how can we change systems that have been in place a very long time, and our systems we're all comfortable with. It's what we grew up with, it's what our parents grew up with, it's what your parents know, but that need to be different to account for changing times. And so I hope in the conversation today we can get that depth of when we say what's working and what's not working, it's far more, the scale is certainly one element of that, but I think there are other questions that go with that, or other elements of the system I'm hoping we can hear back from you on what's working and what's not. And I think it's more than just the scale, although that may be one element. In the end, we want this to be fair to you, certainly. We also want it to be a more rigorous system, I think, because that's what we're seeing as students graduate from American high schools and from our high school, is a need for students to be better prepared for the world beyond high school. So I just hope the conversation can be really multidimensional and really address those different aspects. And I just want to be here to listen to the concerns.
And would you mind just elaborating for us on how exactly the changing the grading model would be making students more prepared for college or the workforce, or more specific terms?
So I think it's different in a number of different ways. Your school-wide competencies are often what I hear from employers are missing in our students. The ability to collaborate with other individuals, the ability to communicate well, the ability to partner and work in groups. I remember visiting an assembly line for a manufacturer in New Hampshire and watching the assembly line teams, and these were positions that didn't even require a college degree, required individuals to work together. So many, the ability to get to work on time and to appropriately address individuals. All of those are important skills. And there was a time when you didn't need the critical thinking and problem-solving skills for many positions that were out there. Every one of the positions we have, whether it requires a graduate degree in college or it's on an assembly line, production line, requires students to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. And that's one of the reasons I think you both see the school-wide competencies being critical, and it's one of the reasons we need to be making shifts in time in how we teach in our classrooms so that students are being asked to do more problem solving. Many of you I know have been in classrooms where our teachers have received training in student authentic performance assessments. Being able to do more kinds of those real-world problem-solving efforts, I think, are important. I also think being able to articulate and understand where you are in your own learning progression and being able to understand how you learn is really critical, because the reality is most of the jobs we're training you for aren't going to exist as they are in 10 or 20 or 30 years. We don't need students who have a lot of information. That was the schooling when I was in school. We need students who know how to adapt to change, who understand how best they learn so that you can continue to learn in whatever approaches make sense for you over a lifetime, because you're going to have different careers, you're going to have many more jobs, you're going to work through many more changes in the course of a career. So you have to be adaptable. To some level, what you're seeing this year with all of the changes that are taking place, you're going to see these types of changes taking place in your workplaces all the time. And so a lot of this, for me, is about understanding what the learning progression is and where you are in the learning progression. And that's one of the reasons I think we had initially looked at first a 4-point scale and now what in essence is an 11-point scale, with rubrics that describe where you are in your learning progression. So that, to me, has been those are some of the important elements for me.
Can I don't think I need that. I have a question. I'm sorry,
You need it for it's being broadcast.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. I'm sorry, DB, whoever you are. My question is, I'm assuming, and sometimes, you know, when you assume things, you're wrong, so I want to make sure I understand. If you're in honors, if you're in the honors, would you hold your hand up? I'm assuming most of you here are honors. Yes, most, and the reason, when I was thinking about it, it would seem to me that the problems that the honor student might have would be quite different from the problems that the at-risk students would have. And so I just wanted to, as we're hearing your concerns, I would like to be able to understand what group of students that reflects. So that's the only reason I was asking you. I have to tell you, though, when you think about people participating, it is usually the thinkers who, I would assume that most of you are engaged in thinking because you're here. It reflects well on you. Because you're here, it means that you care and you're willing to get involved and engaged. If our country needs anything more than anything else, it's to have our young people engaged, to have them part of the process. And that's why the student ambassadors that come on the board, they represent you well. I would like for you to know that. They represent, sometimes they ask hard questions, and sometimes I was particularly impressed by Mary, who was here just a few minutes ago. She did a great job. I was, sometimes, you know, when your opinion differs from somebody else's, it's not easy to express because you don't want to offend that other person. But in an honest dialogue, you need to hear all sides of an argument because it is in the total that you come to the good conclusions. If you only have half of the picture, you don't make good decisions. So I was especially impressed that she had the courage to speak her opinion, and yet she did it like a lady. And that's a key too. When you exchange ideas, educators are wonderful about that. They're able to exchange ideas and disagree with each other and not be disagreeable. And that's such a key skill. If I could encourage you to develop a skill, that would be one that I would say to you will serve you well throughout your life. Sorry for the speech. I'm a speech giver.
If I could just add one other piece, and I should have raised this earlier. I think the other, and this is something I'd like to hear back from you on, learning is a risk-taking activity. You can't learn without making mistakes. And I think our traditional grading system has often discouraged risk-taking because if you were in the early stages of learning, that was weighed as if you were in the final stages of producing a product. And so we've tried to address that in a number of ways by minimizing the impact of formative grades and really looking at where you are in the end, what you've learned, but also giving the opportunity to recover from that if you've, where you can resubmit work if you've struggled and you think you can put some more effort into it to get a better grasp of the material and resubmit an assessment, whether it's an exam or a paper. And that's the real world, right? When I would provide a memo to my boss wouldn't give me a grade and hand it back. If it wasn't good enough, he'd hand it back and say, you need to work on this some more. I also know it's added a lot of work on everybody's plate. It's a different process. So I guess one of my questions would be, how well do you think that process is working? This is where I say there are many layers to this system, or the approach we're taking. Recovery is an important piece, so that's something I'd like to hear about in the next hour or whatever we have. Thank you.
So if anybody would like to come up and speak specifically to recovery, either pro or con, or raise any questions or concerns, I'd especially like to hear from some of the students and teachers who identified themselves as preferring the new grading scale. Since you guys are in the minority today, we'd like to make sure that your views are also represented so we can get that perspective that Ms. Eam was talking about. Sure.
Hello, I'm Michael Bordeaux. I'm a senior, all honors classes and APs. One of the main things on formative assessments is that some teachers don't let you retake them at all and use them as more like checkpoints. So it's something for you to see how well you know the content. I know that some people say that if you fail your formative grade, then you fail it like a competency, and then you fail the class technically with an NC. So just the whole idea of a formative is a little shaky.
Guys, you have us as a captive audience. We're here to receive feedback and your opinion. So please take advantage, seize the moment. Any comment is fair game, but take advantage of us being here, please.
All right, I'm Noah Talerski. I'm a senior. I'm not actually a member of the Senate, but there was an open invitation for students to come to the meeting. Mr. Fenlon said I should come and give my opinion, and I just kind of have just one kind of question, is that the whole changeover, seems like this is a state mandate that we need to switch to a competency-based system, yes?
No,
It's not?
The grading is not.
The grading is not, but the competencies are?
The 100 point is not.
All right.
There's no system, there's just competencies.
Competencies.
The grading system is not mandatory.
Okay, so I just wasn't clear on that. I was just making sure before I started
That was a
talking.
good question. A lot of people are not clear.
So sort of how I feel about it is that even though we're switching to competencies, you can't necessarily stay with the 100-point scale, because the whole point of competencies is showing that you know how to do something. Like you can successfully do something, and on the 100-point scale, there's like 60 levels of failure, right? And F is below a 60 is an F. Sort of on this scale, instead of demonstrating that you know 90% of the information, do you know it? If you get a 90, in most situations you'd say you are proficient in something, you understand it. And I feel like one of the things that kind of threw people off last year was the term above and beyond when we were using the 4-point scale last year, a 4 became associated with above and beyond as opposed to just proficient. So what that meant is some teachers, you had to get an A+, not just 100% on the 100-point scale, you had to get 110 to get a 4. And so what was happening is kids in honors and AP classes, like I think almost all of us are, they weren't getting 4s, they weren't getting A's in their report cards, so then they just shut down. At least I observed that a couple of times, is that people just shut down, they didn't like it, because they weren't getting the A's that they were used to. And it's just sort of, in my opinion, it's just the change, and we're a semester into this change based on changing from a system that was in place for more than 100 years. So it's not even apples to oranges, it's apples to like carrots or something. It's not exactly a fair comparison to just say, all right, we're going to switch it now because it hasn't prevented people from getting into college, right? Seniors, raise your hands. All right. So our seniors are being accepted to colleges. They're not just being shut out because schools don't understand what we're doing. The guidance department is sending the school report, right?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
One of the comments made at curriculum was that you would be given a test, and if you didn't do well on it, you came back and took the test over, and it was the identical same test. How many of you have experienced that? That was not norm. That really concerned me, so I'm glad to see that you're not raising your hands. To me, that would be totally unfair. So I have to assume that was just a very unique circumstance. Thank you. That was.
So I think kind of something about recovery, actually, now that you brought it up, is that I know there are some teachers who it's silly if you're taking, a quiz, right, and it counts as a summative for you to recover it, like a short answer quiz. It's silly for you to have to do all the recovery work and show you're competent in this, because the competencies for an English class are reading, writing, listening, speaking. It's not testing if you know the plot of Hamlet. It's testing, can you write about a play or something? And so if you don't do well on the Hamlet test, well, can you proficiently write about The Great Gatsby? Because that's really what it should be assessing. It's not necessarily an understanding of the material. It's, can you write with an understanding? And so if you're going to spend time recovering Hamlet, you end up falling behind on The Great Gatsby, and then you need to recover Gatsby, and you fall behind on Catcher in the Rye or whatever it is you do next. And so I think something that needs to be addressed is the recovery process right now. Definitely, there's lots of areas that it could be improved, I think.
So when they do, and I admit I'm probably the least informed about this, so I'm learning from you guys, and I thank you for teaching us, because we certainly need to know to do a good job. So if I have 4 competencies, let's say, and I get 3 A's and 1 F, what is your understanding that your grade would be? That would be a 0, and the other would be 300, and you would divide 4 into 300?
You just failed.
You failed the whole thing. No matter how many competencies there are, if you fail one of them, all of them go down.
You get no credit.
No, you don't
Not
get
enough. They get no credit with the option to recover it 5 weeks after the semester, technically through the policy. But they have to pass each competency of each course, is my understanding.
So how will they, if you have, let's say the last semester you fail a competency, how will you make that up? Are you going to come to summer school to do it?
That answers the question, because graduation happens before summer school. I actually, as a teacher, I'm not sure. Do we have something in place?
Well, I think, so the answer would be, it's the same question now. If you fail a course now, it becomes a question of whether you can graduate. If it's not necessary for graduation because you've earned sufficient credit, that's one issue. Some students do wind up having to go back to summer school at the end of their senior year and obtain a diploma during the summer. It's really the same issue you have in place now.
I'm on students if
Recovering.
they're not, if they have a competency or two that they're not passing, I'm on them. Meaning,
You start before the end so that they
Yeah.
know they have to run.
right.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm pretty much, yeah. Oh, can I just do one?
It's nice to see you again.
right.
We
Can I
remember
just-
you.
I just
You
have one
came
more-
to our
all right.
meeting, and that was wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much.
I know, no, just one last thing I wanted to say is, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that at least I feel that it's silly to compare a semester to hundreds of years. That's absurd. Having taken math classes, that's half of a year, that's 200 times the length or more that you're looking at. That's, in my mind, absurd and ridiculous. That you would find that those are comparable. They aren't comparable. You need more time. You need a class to come in as freshmen. Are there freshmen? Right? This is your first year as this. 4 years from now, they will have gone through high school, 4 years with the same system. Maybe then you can judge and reassess where we are. But until then, I think it's silly to be.
May I ask a follow-up then? Are you suggesting, or would you suggest, or make a recommendation? I love recommendations from people, so keep that in mind. I want to know what you're thinking. So, are you in a way suggesting perhaps that people who are coming in as freshmen now have this 4-point scale, but the folks that are midway through the 100-point should continue with it to graduation?
Well, so
So
there's,
we don't change wheels on you twice or 4 times?
well, so since there's classes with mixed levels, that wouldn't necessarily be possible to have some classes, some students graded on one scale and some graded on the other. But you know, if it changes midstream, then that's reflected in the school report that's sent to colleges. It's not really a big deal. If you're a good student, you'll still be getting good grades.
And we haven't heard from colleges yet, have we? Any
No.
feedback?
Yeah, students, early action students have already been accepted, but we haven't heard back from colleges that there was an issue with the competencies and these grades being worse off.
Nobody has heard back from a college negatively? Well, that's a good thing. I'm glad. I'm glad.
I don't think we would expect that specific of a feedback from a college. I don't think.
Not usually, but sometimes if you know people in the college, like, sometimes generations go to the same college and they know, you know, so sometimes you do under the radar, so definitely. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you all. My name's Ashley. I'm a junior here, so I've experienced the 3 levels of grading. I wanted to address the IP issue that we talked about if you fail a specific competency, because my brother is currently in that situation. He's not here, so I'll call him out.
He'll get you when you go home.
Right, so he did fail a competency, so he received an NC in his grade, and he is currently going through the 5-week process where he has to go see this teacher during E-blocks and after school and try to make up this competency that he failed while balancing his 4 other new classes. So it's taking on a lot of responsibility, and I have to advocate for him. He tried during the semester, but it's very hard that, I believe it was his formative, to be honest, that he did great in the other 3 competencies, yet, you know, BAs, yet failed this one, and now he's struggling with all the recovery work to get back on top and receive this credit on top of taking on, like I said, 4 new classes and trying to start off well.
So are you saying that he doesn't just have to go back and take that one competency, he has to take them all?
No, he has to recover that one competency, but it isn't as simple as going back and here's a test to get your credit. You know, it's a continuous thing. Yeah, exactly. It's like taking on a 5th class. So yeah, and I'm an honor student, AP, but I also see it from the students at risk level where I don't see that it's fair is that a kid can not do their work and receive an IP, where a kid can simply not understand a topic, especially in math. If you receive a 4-question quiz and you just don't get it and get an IP, and in the grade book it's the same.
Is he an honor student too?
My brother is an honor student,
That's good to know.
yes. But, I mean, he takes honors classes, but there's always different types of students. We'll throw that out there. Yeah, there's different.
So would you say the recovery process, the way it's structured now, can be a real disadvantage to someone if you're caught up in a subject and that you just don't resonate with it, and you've got this magical 5th class? That's overload. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of head bobbing, yes.
Yeah.
So do you guys get into panic over that? Or you're not quite panicked, but it's enough that you're working a lot harder, you're more stressed?
I could argue that about the 5th class, and I believe that that's the case with regular recovery too, because recovery is such a process, especially when you are in honors classes or have so many other classes that you're doing continuous work for, and then you're continuing on that work in English, but you still have to go back and do all this. And then the other topic I wanted to bring up, if you're okay with me moving on, is that some teachers I don't believe are clear on this scale, because I have teachers that are still grading on the 100 point and then simply converting, which I don't think is fair at all, because what's the point of this if I'm still being graded on the 100 point and then just converting it? And then on Aspen, you still see the 1 to 4 grade, which was supposed to be gone, and I think many students just don't even understand what their grade means. Like, I can't even go on and see an average. So that's where I am on it. And as a junior, like, it is scary to hear from my senior friends, like, how are colleges dealing with this? How are they going to see this? How do I send mine in? Because that's all that's in my head right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up, if I may. A follow-up, back to the teachers not clear on the scale. Do you think, a raise of hands, how comfortable are you with the way this whole grading thing, has been explained to students and to teachers? Is it done well? Do you think there's need of improvement? I'm sorry, please? Say again? I heard a voice. I don't know where it came from.
So, I'm a, do I have to, you don't have, oh, and I don't want to take it away from you. Just very briefly, there's a lot of internal conflict in, between the grading systems. The teachers are kind of fighting it themselves too, oh no, we don't want to do that, so we're going to grade you this way, and then we're like, oh, how are we being graded? And it's just kind of, I guess there's not that much, conformity among teachers, so it's creating even more conflict, because they don't want to do it, and then, we're confused, and so, yeah.
And this is a big deal? You think it's prevalent?
I do, yeah. I think a lot of teachers are using different scales, I think an issue is teachers don't know which scale they're supposed to be using, because they're always changing, and then there's the teachers who do, but don't, so then it's a little bit, yeah.
Is that a consensus? I know that's a tough word to use. Is that a largely held opinion? Somebody raise hands if you agree with her. You do? 4 classes, 2 different grading scales. Okay. Does it make the teachers crazy? Can I ask you the question that way? Oh, that's almost unanimous. So, at least on that side of the room. Wait, those guys aren't saying anything. What's going on here? You guys don't have a voice on that one, and they do? Oh, come on.
Don't call them out.
I know. Don't call them out? Oh, why not? It's fun. Okay. Thank you for your opinion on that side of the room. Sorry for the interrupt,
Is
and
that,
thank you for your feedback.
is that a teacher I see back there that wanted to share something with us?
He raised his
No?
hand.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
My name is Ben Tolerski. I'm not a member of the Senate, but I am freshman class vice president, and I've talked to a lot of students, and I feel that the general consensus among students, even though I don't agree, is that they don't like the new competency-based system, and I haven't really gotten a clear answer of why they don't like it. They're saying things like, oh, it lowers your grade, it's too complicated, nobody understands it, stuff like that. And I feel teachers that are supportive of it and administration have done a nice job explaining how the system works so everyone understands it. But I feel what could be improved is explaining exactly why it's beneficial, like it raises the standards, and like Mr. Guy said at one of the Board of Ed meetings, how it's easier to figure out the difference between a 3 and a 4 versus an 82 and an 85. And I think that's something that should definitely be addressed in the future.
Kathy Eicher, I teach business in the NTC here at school. Very rarely have access to you kids, so I want to ask you guys a question, and I want you guys to hear it. Okay, so the question is, with the competency-based grading system, you guys can kind of parse this out a bit. What do you feel you like about it? What is working for the system? And what's the flip side? What are the things that you guys don't like about it? What are your frustrations with it? So if I could just kind of get to some of those different elements that Mr. Conrad was bringing up. If you can sort of think about it in those two ways and come up and give us some input that way. For example, me as a teacher, what I like about it, I like the levels, the descriptors. 85%, what does that mean? So a proficient student looks like this, and there's a description. I like that. What I don't like is Aspen and how Aspen communicates that information to parents and systems, and to students, parents, students, and teachers for that matter. That I don't like. We'll have a meeting on Wednesday on that. So what works for you guys with the system? What is frustrating about the system? And if you can kind of throw some stuff out, that would be great.
Thank you.
Just pass them around.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Should I stand up? All right, go on, just okay. So, thanks for coming, guys. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Jacob Keesley, senior class president here at South. And some of my concerns about the new grading system and the way we access Aspen is it's pretty unclear. It seems like the grades are very ambiguous. When I log on to Aspen and I see that I have 4 grades in a class and the way they're weighted differently, let's say I have a formative. For instance, this formative is only 10% of my grade, and I don't do well on a quiz, but I have all A pluses in my big grades, like my summatives. I could be failing the class because I failed a small portion of my entire grade. Moreover, if I got 100 on something, if I got all the questions right on a test and I got 100, that would be converted to an A+. Now, for some teachers, and I know I'm not the only one, if I get all the questions right, I'm descriptive, and normally that would have been 100 and A+, that might not be a 4. That might be a 3.5, which might convert to a B, because I didn't go above and beyond. And I think that's most frustrating about this, because before, if you got everything right, and you described it, you studied for it, it was an A+, you know what I mean? It was perfect. It was exactly what they asked for. But now you have to do more than they asked for, and sometimes it's a little tough to know, what they want. Maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. If anybody wants to touch on that, I'll just should I just? Oh, don't
I know, it's too hard. I just want to clarify one thing, that if you do not pass your formatives, it will not prevent you from passing the class. It is only the summative competencies. Every teacher is like that, no matter what. Everything is set up like that. So even if your formatives are weighted or unweighted, if you do not pass them, you will not be prevented from passing the course. It's the competencies that matter.
Can I have a follow-up to you?
Yeah.
You were talking about the 1 to 4 scale.
Right.
What do you mean by the 1 to 4 scale?
Oh, maybe not 1 to 4, but oh, okay, 1 to 4.
It is.
1 to 5?
No.
It's point scale?
That's what I was gonna say.
You either get a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. Like 4 is proficient with distinction. 3 is just proficient. 2 is like approaching or something.
Learning.
All right, Kelly's got it.
All right. One thing I'd like to clarify, I think that our problems stem from a miscommunication because we are talking about a 1 to 4 scale right now, but technically we are on an 11-point scale when you go from A, B, C, D, and then IPs and then Fs. So I think that our frustration lies with the communication error that is going between teachers and students. And I'd like to just point that out. I feel like this would not be such a big hassle if we got our act together and communicated it through everyone. It would not be as hard to handle as it is.
Well, let me say, I think you're right. Kelly, I think you're absolutely right. Communication is a big problem because as a board member, we voted to do away with the 1 to 4 scale when the teachers from South came to the board. I think there was a lot of discussion among teachers with the 1 to 4 scale. I've used rubrics, I've used the 1 to 4 scale. There can be a big difference between somebody at a 3 level who's almost to a 4 and somebody who's at a 3 level that just made it from a 2. And my understanding is they went to an 11-point scale because of that reason. So when I hear so many students talk about the 1 to 4 scale, it concerns me because it was my understanding as a board member that we were not using the 1 to 4 scale at all.
If I can just follow up on that quickly, and maybe you guys can tell me if I'm hearing this right. I've also heard some teachers are using a 100-point scale. And what I suspect is happening, and if you look at our board policy, it really invites this. You have teachers who may use the 4-point scale, they may use the 11-point scale, they may use the 100-point scale, and then they convert it when they go to enter the grade into X2 based on the 11-point scale. Would that be a fair analysis?
I've had a lot of teachers tell me that they're doing both, that they're running the old way and the new way because they're concerned that it might go back. So if it goes back, they don't want to be caught short, having to go and redo all of that work.
So I feel like some of our work as a faculty may be saying whatever the scale is, that's what we grade in across the board. We don't provide interim grades to you that may be on different scales and then convert it all when we enter it into the grade book. Would that be fair?
And if you think about it, if you have 1,750 students at each school, you've got 3,500 kids that you've got to communicate this to. And then if you throw in that all of the teachers have to. And some of the teachers are very diligent and studious and try very hard to follow the ball. But some may be busy in their classroom the day it's explained and don't get the explanation. And so that goes to the 100-year. You know, when things change, it's like learning new technology. Some of us old guys struggle with it forever. And so I think you can understand why it might be a little difficult because of the numbers, because some people pay attention, some people don't. It's a difficult thing, communication. But there again, going back to my first preaching, communication is everything. The best skill you can develop is people skills. If you think about it, is there a job anywhere that you can do without interacting with people? And if that's the case, then how important is it to be able to communicate your thoughts and ideas, to be able to, and I think that's one of the big goals of this. Nothing is all bad or all good. And that's why I do agree with Mr. Conrad that if we can pick out the good and keep the good and get rid of those things that aren't working, then we have the best of all worlds. And that would be our goal. Please know that all of us, when we agree or disagree, we all have the same motive, and that is to make you all stronger and better so that you're prepared to go out and represent our nation so that we'll continue to be the best nation in the world. Another preacher, I'm a preacher at heart.
Hi, I'm Andrew Samard, I'm a sophomore. And I'd just like to emphasize the point that it seems that the main problem with competencies and the 11-point scale seems to be a lack of clarity. Like at the beginning of each semester in every class, it seemed I got my own sort of mutation of what competencies meant to the teacher and to the class. And that came as well with a sheet of paper with a conversion chart of what the 4-point scale meant to the 11-point scale meant to the 100-point scale. It just seemed that there was no clear message. Our senior class president, in the same sentence, used 100 1 to 4, and 11. Aspen presents us with a 4-point scale as well as a letter grade with no average. And I understand that this is a long process that, of course, has been changed after many, many decades, but it just seems to be at the expense of the students and the teachers. I'm sure they could talk about Aspen much more than I could.
Hi, I'm Allison Reynolds. I'm a junior here, so I've also had to deal with different grading systems. And I'm going to start by saying, like, in some cases, I think competencies do make a lot of sense, like, specifically world languages. For example, I just took German last semester, and we've had to have our writing competencies, like reading, speaking, like just understanding it in general, and I think that's really well-rounded. But in other cases, it's really hard to actually have assignments specifically fit into the competencies that we're trying to do. For example, I had a teacher last semester. We had certain assignments that would have to be dropped like certain amount of times into other competencies that normally we wouldn't have hit, except we don't have a lot of them, so it would count extra because of that, just to make up for it. And I think it makes it harder to get around. And then there's the fact that with the 4-point scale, it just makes it so much harder to get the same grades as before, because you have, like, to get the 4, you have to go above and beyond. You have to go that step further that isn't exactly outlined in the question, the point of the assignment. You have to take it farther to get the same grade, and it just makes it harder. So.
So again, I'm Emma Fenlon. So I know we're all sitting here and like talking about the grading scale or whatever, so I don't really have a problem with competencies. And underneath it all, I don't really have a problem with the 12-point scale. 11. There's only 11 points. Oh, okay. So the thing I really have a problem with is the process of recovery. So I'm a senior, and I'm in like my college mindset, you know, gotta get into college, gotta do good. So what I don't like about recovery is that there's really no guidelines. So I can do my homework, not my homework, because homework is formative. That wouldn't count. I can do my project, my poster, whatever. I can spend all night doing my poster. And then my classmate can go to bed at 7 o'clock and not do his poster and just be like, I'll do it in a week. And me and him can get the same grade. But who is telling colleges or, in fact, like my class rank or my GPA that this boy handed in his project 2 weeks late and got the same grade as I did? Although my work ethic was fine. I stayed up all night. I tried so hard. But he was just like, no, I'll do it later. I know with recovery, I can do it later. But then when comparing us as students, on the outside we look the same, but that says nothing about our work ethic or anything we do.
In the real world,
yeah,
if you turned it in 2 weeks late, you wouldn't have a job.
Right.
In the real world, though, if you had it early, you would be
Right.
one
And in
headed
college,
for
there's no, I'm
Yes,
going to hand this in late.
absolutely.
Just to build upon what Emma was saying, I think when I look at recovery, I see 3 main problems. You have one, like Emma, you have the slacker kid who says, I'm not going to do it, I'll do it another time because that's something that this system allows me to do. Then you have, probably not so much with this group of kids, I think in some of the lower levels you have the kids who have this opportunity to recover, who this system could be really actually beneficial for, who either are passing up on the opportunity and still taking the no credit, or who get so caught up in recovering, like Noah said, the Great Gatsby, that they can't focus on the Catcher in the Rye Hamlet, and they keep falling continually behind. And then I think the third problem you have is with a lot of the kids in this room taking honors and AP classes, getting a B+ and then recovering for an A. And I don't understand why that can happen. I mean, if you do a B+ work the first time, why should you have this second opportunity when you've clearly learned the material? Maybe you didn't completely master it. I mean, I think it's just an inflated form of grade grubbing to be able to recover.
So are you saying that you think
I think a lot of the teachers are getting a lot of unnecessary work from
Well, it
this.
sounds like what you're saying is, though, that you think the chance to recover should only be for those students who truly had a difficult time getting the concept in the first place,
Right.
not those.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you'd probably find the majority of recovery is coming with kids close to the top of their class in honors and AP classes.
See, I had a problem. We have 2 diplomas in Nashville High School and in our high schools, and it's always been a thing to me. Why should one be graduated with X credits and the other one has to have X plus? And that's what I think I'm hearing from you. And again, you know, you take a program and you try to take the good out of it and keep that and fix the weaknesses. And so that's why it's invaluable to hear from you, to really be able to judge what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses, going to Mr. Conrad's point. So,
Can I ask him a follow-up?
Sure.
How many students are using E-Block for recovery? Do you have any idea?
raise your hand if you use E-Block for recovery.
I think a lot.
A lot here. Did you get a high grade?
Yeah, I think a lot. If you guys can be honest for a minute, when you have done
Please be
recovery,
honest.
has it been not because you failed, but because you wanted a higher grade? Can you raise your hand if you've done that?
We got through it.
How many kids think that the kids that need recovery are using E-Block to recover?
If you think that's the case.
I don't
raise
know
your
if they
hand.
can necessarily speak to that.
Well,
I think the teachers might be able to. Yeah.
can we hear from the teachers? They're not.
recovery was designed for are not taking advantage of it. The kids that recovery was not necessarily designed for are capitalizing on it.
Okay, thank you.
But most of you feel that E-Block is valuable and we should keep the E-Block. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, because they get their grades bumped, so they're working hard. So they need the time. No, hey, you have to take whatever advantage is available to you. Don't get me wrong.
There's other
Other uses for E-Block.
All right, before the teachers go, why don't we do the last two students and then we'll shift to teachers?
So I'm Cam McIntyre. I'm a sophomore here. One of the things about recovery that I wanted to touch on is that so many kids are not studying for tests now, and they're not putting in the work that they want to do for it. So now many teachers are getting frustrated with this recovery. So when this kid who hasn't done any of the homework, hasn't done any of the formative work, is saying, oh, I want to retake this test because I've done nothing and I want to pass the class. So my problem is with that is that teachers are getting tired of recovery now, and they're not letting kids who say me, I'm really trying, but I just don't get it and I need a second chance. Some teachers are getting very frustrated with that, and they're not letting me recover it because of all this ridiculousness with, yes, yeah.
In society, it's always the case. Those who abuse the system make it bad for those of us who do not. Absolutely, always the case.
Yeah, and then, do you want to go?
Yeah, so are you saying you're not getting access to the recovery that you wish to have?
Yes, because it's so overwhelming for teachers.
Because it's an extra burden on the
Mhm.
part of the teacher to
Yes.
accommodate you and everything?
Yeah.
Through that 5-week process?
Not so much 5-week, but during the semester.
You're thinking course recovery and describing, I think, grade recovery.
Oh.
In-course recovery.
New to the board, sorry. Trial by fire.
And then the other thing quickly that I just want to touch on quickly is the whole communications issue. I think, well, the scale that we're on right now is supposed to be a letter grade scale. We're supposed to get an A+ down through a C-, but whenever a teacher enters a letter grade into the grade book, it's converting it to the 4-point scale, which is a big confusion because I think that X2 is emphasizing the number on the 4-point scale conversion more than the letter grade is, and I don't think that's the true system that we're under right now. So I think that if we want a letter grade system, I realize that you can't average numbers together, but that this system needs to be purely letter grades, and that I think that will help eliminate some of the confusion. That's it for me.
ask a question, if I may? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm Jack Leatherman. I'm a junior. So I was not here as a freshman. I was at a different school, but I've seen the last 2 years the grading system shift. And me, I am fortunate enough to have a mother who teaches in the community college system in Massachusetts. And the big thing that I hear from her is she looks at how this new system is, and she's asking me, why is there recovery? In college, there is no recovery. In college, you do it the first time or you fail that assignment. And she has kids who, it's a normal thing for her, her students, who will get halfway through a class and have to drop it because they know they're not going to be able to finish it. And for them, that's better because now they know what they need to work on. They know that they need to focus more on a specific thing, and it's more of a wake-up call to them to focus on that. And I think here we're getting bogged down on, like we've said earlier so many times, that people are trying to recover grades and as a result failing classes that they should be focusing on. And it's making it a big issue for kids who should just, not that anyone should ever have to drop a class, but for kids who it might just be better to simply stop that class and find something else that either suits them more or something that fits their level, as opposed to trying to recover something that they, will just get bogged down trying to fix. And that's just recovery. Then the other thing with Aspen, because when I look at my grades, all I see is different numbers for each competency, and then a letter, and no, indication of what kind of scale or, notes from teachers or anything like that. It's just the letters, or the letters and then the 4-point scale numbers next to them. And it's confusing because, like we said, I personally didn't know what system exactly we were using until today, because I didn't know if it was letter-based. I didn't know if it was 4-point scale still, because that's what Aspen says, or if it's the 11-point scale that I've been hearing is what it's supposed to be. And because all I see is the letter grade next to the 4-point scale. And while I'm in Senate, but I'm not the most informed Senate member, I'll be the first to admit that. But most students in the school are less informed than me, and all they see is Aspen. And they probably are even more confused than I am.
Can I ask a question relative to Aspen? How many of you guys, I know there's an app for the phone, and who's in it all the time? Hands? There isn't? We were in a meeting last week and they said there was an app on the phone.
There is a mobile version, but it is not nearly as good as the
So the app on the
full
phone
website.
doesn't work?
Yeah, it seems like Aspen.
Okay, so you guys, if you have access to it, you're in there checking on your progress, right? Your parents, are they in on it too? Are they all over your back to keep track of stuff, or?
Some kids have stopped. Now that Aspen doesn't make sense to them, I think they've stopped checking. I know that's the case for some. I know a lot of kids still check religiously, but some, it doesn't make sense when they log on, so why would they?
It's even worse for teachers because there's a lot of time that goes into all the competency levels, and then from there, when they grade, they have to go into Aspen, and Aspen doesn't cooperate. And I can't speak for teachers, I don't think, but like a lot of times I hear that it takes a lot more time to put in grades, and then Aspen doesn't even get a good final result. So I think the system that we're using online is terrible. Part of the problem.
So I'm Andrew Dunham, freshman, and so obviously we've been hearing that many students rather would have the old, just everything, compared to what we've just changed to this year. But I think people are confusing the 11-point scale to the 100-point scale with competencies to non-competencies. So I was just wondering, show of hands, who would rather have competencies versus none?
Versus what?
Versus not having competencies. Oh. Like, compared to teachers being able, like, other than 90-10, that grading system, like having homework being 20, that sort of thing. As opposed to like speaking inquiry for English classes. Does it?
I have a question. I know under competencies you get no credit for homework. How many think that's a good thing? How many think that hurts students?
Some departments do give credit for formative work, such as homework and classwork. It was a department decision.
Oh, okay.
World languages do not give credit for homework, but math classes do.
Okay.
So it's not an all or nothing.
Up to 20%. Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Would you rather have consistency across the board? I mean, rather than departmental? Okay, so there's no straight rule on that one. Context is important.
I'm Rob Green. I teach English here, creative writing. I have 3 quick ones. It's going to be quick. The first one is I find it kind of interesting that Mr. Conrad was talking about what is lacking among our graduates, but the only kind of measure of that are the school-wide competencies. They don't count for anything. They can't make you not graduate. They show up on your report card, but they don't really have any effect on your average. We did a lot of work actually stripping that kind of good at school kind of stuff out of the competencies we use in the classroom to put into the school-wide competencies. But now the school-wide competencies exist in a way that have no teeth. So that's one issue. Issue number 2, somebody made a really good metaphor about comparing apples to carrots. Who said that? That was awesome. The problem is we're not really dealing with carrots. We're dealing with chopped carrots mixed with chopped apples. And instead of like going through a true competency-based system, we went to a system where we're taking competencies, which are a good idea, and then we're twisting them and perverting them into an alphabet system, into an A, B, C, D, which is not what they're designed to do. You're not supposed to, your success is not an average of your skills, and competencies are skills. If I have a class with 4 different skills, then my value as a student, or my work as a student, is not an average of those skills. I'm either good at this skill, bad at this skill, good at this skill, great at this skill, but that doesn't transport, or that shouldn't transform into an A or a B or a C or a D. And I think it's really just the Board of Education was kind of afraid of getting rid of like things like class rank and things like GPA and stuff like that. They were afraid of getting rid of that because, that looks really weird on the outside. If it was a true competency-based system, we would have gotten rid of that stuff, and we just have each competency, and that's how we would evaluate, but we're not doing that. The other thing I was asked to speak about is X2, which is the program we use for grading. I've abhorred X2 ever since it started. The user interface is terrible. At this point in time, in order to like type in a single grade, I've got to open up this window, wave my hand, stand on my head, open up this other window, and I got to figure out exactly what place to put it in. I'm using 4 different rubrics for each assignment, and then I finally close it up, and then I can't see what the grade is unless I open it back up, and then I try to look at the kid's average. I can't figure out what the kid's average is because X2 is so convoluted, and we're using it to do something it was not designed to do. We bought the cheapest version to begin with, and now we're trying to get a Honda Accord to do the work of a Mack truck, I guess would be my metaphor. And those would be my 3 points. So thank you.
To answer your question, you're saying that the school-wide competencies don't make or break a student graduating.
Right.
What does?
Well, there are competencies in school. So for example, if I had Sam in class, I have 4 competencies in my English class. And Sam will probably do fine, even though he dropped my class because he's a jerk. But there also is a series of school-wide competencies that I just finished putting in for my students. So there's like four school-wide competencies that I had to go in for every single student. So I had to put in 4 new grades for all my students. None of those, and that was like citizenship and all that responsibility and all that kind of stuff. So I put those grades in, but those grades don't matter at all.
So what are the graduation competencies?
The graduation competencies are writing for English. It's writing. Can he write? Can he read? Can he speak? Can he research?
Is that in every course?
That's just for English. Every course has their own competencies.
Okay, so you're saying that there's 2 sets of competencies for every course?
No, well, there's two sets of, well, we have the school-wide competencies, which is overarching, and that's the discipline, good at school kind of competencies.
Character.
And then each course has its own set of academic competencies.
Because in the state regulations, there's district competency, graduation competencies, so you have building competencies and academic.
Well, I think the district
Just trying to-
competencies are what we call school-wide competencies.
Okay, the districts are the school-wide, and the
And then you have the
graduation are the
academic.
academic. Okay, just trying to clarify.
Thank you. And I'd be happy to send you the rubric. The school-wide competencies, even in the most basic, your kid is not doing well format, says, I can solve a problem. I can come to class. As a parent, if my son brought that home, I would have no indication that he was not doing everything he needed to do. So the wording on the school-wide competencies, to my view, is a very false representation of what the student is doing in the class.
And that's what you're gonna send us?
I will be happy to send you that rubric.
Oh, he's saying we have them right here. Thank you.
What's her name? Excuse me, can you tell me your name?
Wendy.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you.
So I've been agreeing with a lot of what things you said. One thing that I'm kind of confused about is like midterms and finals and how that goes into competencies. I feel like there's kind of a disconnect there because you always think of finals and midterms as like these huge tests that you study for that are supposed to be accumulation of all your knowledge. But if you've already proved the competency, why should that be a necessary thing? And that's kind of what I've been. I don't know if I'm completely misunderstanding it or.
I think you're seeing a debate that's taking place among faculty over the role of finals versus whether you simply go through the learning progression to the point where you master the competency. This is an area that other school systems are looking at as well, where they're changing how they look at their finals grades. So in some districts, if you've met the competency, rather than attending school during those 2 or 3 days, they reserve that time for students who need more time to work on that competency so they can try to get that in-course recovery before they move to the next semester.
Okay.
So I think you've really hit an area where there's still some debate among faculty here and in other places as well.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but you in the lime green. Cam? Cam. Okay. I know you said the thing about how some kids can completely like not try and get something. I know in my experience that some of my teachers have put this policy in place that if you don't try your best to complete your formative assessments, which are supposed to lead up to your summative and help you to do better, you're not able to recover that. And I don't know if, I honestly think that's a good idea. I think that as long as someone's doing those formative assessments and trying to get and to learn the material, compared to someone who's completely blowing off all their formative assessments and then they go and do badly on the summative, it's like, well, what did you do to prepare? And so I think that that was a pretty good way to address that issue of whether or not their work ethic, because the formative shows your work ethic. It shows that you've been doing what you need to do all along to try and get the best grade that you can get. So.
May I ask a question? Would you say there's consistency within the departments? I mean, obviously the departments, that thing with the math, they give 20% credit where maybe an English may not, I'm getting a real no from.
There is zero consistency among the departments, in my opinion. People are manipulating what is called a summative assessment so that they can count things like content and homework. People are manipulating the system to basically do what they feel their students should be doing. And quite honestly, I think I support them because we're professionals. I've been teaching for 22 years, and I feel that I've done a pretty good job of incorporating competencies
tell me what what you would like to go to if you had your way?
Personally, I used the traditional X2 standards last year out of a 100-point scale where I did total points earned over total points possible, so that each category was weighted differently. Students who did, the work and the grades that they deserved and everything was weighted appropriately, in my opinion. But that might not work for another student.
We like the flexibility.
I think there needs to be flexibility. We're all different teachers. The competencies, did you do it proficiency, works very, very well in some classes, in others not so much.
So if we went back to the, as you explained, the X2 grade book, would that give the teachers the flexibility they need?
I think X2 has a lot of problems. I'm not going to advocate for
Well,
it.
but in that
I think
direction.
the traditional elements of the X2 grade book work better for me personally.
With an improved set of
It
software.
improved what I could do and what I could communicate. I could look at a full class of grades. I knew what assignments were missing. Student averages were live. It gave me everything that many of us are asking X2 to do on the standards book that we haven't been able to do yet.
So that's actually kind of a relevant segue into what I was going to say. So first, please don't throw anything at me, but I was part of the group of students that helped write the school-wide competencies. If you're going to throw anything, throw it at Brendan or Kelly. But basically, our whole idea when we were doing that is since we were moving to the academic competencies, the graduation competencies, we wanted to take out playing school. So in the past, like the old X2 grade book, you'd get 10% say for doing your homework assignments, right? But now that they're formative, do you necessarily need to do them? I had classes where there'd be a participation grade, where if you'd get 10% of the class is participation. Do you sit in class? Do you raise your hand? Do you ask questions? Do you look engaged? That's not how everyone learns. And it's entirely subjective. There's absolutely no way to measure that effectively. And so what we were trying to do was remove that kind of thing from the grade to graduate. Do you know the stuff should be entirely separate from, are you good at being a student? Are you good at playing school? Can you sit down, show up and do the work? Well, that's part of it. It's not necessarily true to what competencies are supposed to be, which is actually about your finals question. Sort of the argument is you should just be able to show up and take the final and pass the class and not have to do any other work. It should be a rolling thing as opposed to just averaging assignments together is really what the true spirit of competencies are. And I feel like what's happening is instead of going towards that, we're still fighting to go back to what we knew before.
Have you had a literature course where you read literature and you get into class and you discuss it and debate it, and if the kids don't participate, there's really little discussion?
So
is there value to that?
So there is value to that, but that's assessed different. That's not, a participation grade is not participating in a discussion like that. That is actually a summative assessment in some English classes is, do you put in your 2 cents during...
Renamed it.
Not necessarily. So no, but what it was before is, do you sit in class, do you listen? Are you disruptive? You're going to lose points on your final grade. That's not what it should be. Because if you're disruptive, then you're just hurting yourself, you're hurting other people. Get out of the class. I know that might actually be what they want. I think you should send kids out of class if they're being disruptive. Because that's... But if you have to be able to speak about literature, have a group discussion, and that is assessed, that's different from asking a question about the homework that you had to do, even though you already understood.
At college level, at a collegiate level, in which you're preparing for, you do your homework, you read your history assignments, you read your different works, you come in, then you exchange ideas, and that's what the classroom has value for. Otherwise, you could all do it remotely online.
Yeah, but in college, you aren't necessarily being graded on, being able to have that discussion. It could just be that one paper you turn in on the last day of class.
Graded, but you do definitely interact and learn and grow from it. I
Well,
think. So that's what my understanding is. Participation in a high school is getting you ready for that and encouraging participation.
So
Certain classes
it's not devaluing participation. It's trying to separate it from the academic understanding of a grade. Yeah, it's like elementary schoolers get a behavior grade on their report card. That was kind of the idea. We're trying to separate it from, do you know how to do algebra? Do you know how to write an effective essay?
That's what you were asked to do. You were asked to do by administration. You guys were asked to set the conferences up that way.
Yeah.
You did a fine job. I don't want anybody to think you're picking on your competency. It was pretty good. Good work. But, you know, you were asked to do a job and you did your job.
Just a very quick. Is it a student or a tea? Yeah. I am a student. I am a student right now. I'm looking out and just seeing, we had mentioned before, some incredibly talented, motivated students. And one of the things that concerns me most about recovery in general, and you could lump aspects of the grading scale into this, is that it in no way prepares all of these students in front of you for the rigors of a college experience. You know, I'm in graduate school right now up at Dartmouth. I keep in communication with several of my students who are in freshmen, sophomore, and juniors in college right now, and they laugh in emails when I tell them about what we're doing. And mostly the grading looks like this, and it still looks like this, and I think it will continue to look like this. You know, 30 or 40% if it's a seminar class. Participation, not to Noah's point of are you in the seat, but are you actively engaged in contributing to the conversation. You'll have, you know, 3 papers worth 20% each, maybe a final where you show up with your blue book, and that's it. And I know maybe that's not the appropriate grading practice for a freshman, but what I would hope, especially with our seniors, is that we are preparing them for that very rigorous sort of no second chances experience that I am doing now again, and I have talked to students that are experiencing as well. So that's one of my anxieties or fears about some of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mr. Greenwood. I'm one of the social studies teachers here. This morning I had a young man, burly fellow, with tears in his eyes. And he said, you know, you told me that if I didn't do my formative stuff, it wouldn't make me get a no credit for the course. And he could see that on his Aspen, even though he's not supposed to see that yet, on his Aspen. And so he had a no credit, even though he did everything I asked him to do. So the computer doing the wrong calculation, I don't see as his fault. That's our fault. I'm speaking to the adults in the room. Him not understanding how the grading works, I don't see as his fault. That's our fault for the adults in the room. So I think as our students get up here and share their very rich experiences, their very real experiences with us, I think it's important that we don't correct them and we don't point them in a different direction. We just hear it and we say, you know what, that's their experience. If that's how they interpret this, that's how it's been presented to them. That's not their fault, that's our fault. So when kids say, I'm failing because of formative, we got to kind of take them at their word. When they say, I have 4 teachers with 4 different programs, we got to take them at their word. When they say, I get graded on 100, I get graded on a letter, I get graded on a 0 to 4, we kind of got to take them at their word. So I appreciate you all coming to listen, and I really appreciate you guys being willing to share. And I hope you don't feel like we're correcting you or judging you or anything of that sort. It's very important that we hear your feedback.
And I would
that's
add
it.
that I think you're all A+. You're a very formidable group.
I would like
Yeah. Plus, 4 plus.
quick comment. Thank you for the opportunity to hear what you had to say, but it's not a one-time deal, okay? The board, as a board, all 9 of us, plus a whole bunch of other folks, we're there every other Monday night. So if you have a concern you want to bring to the board, there's an email address, boe@nashua.edu. You are more than welcome to come to any of our board meetings, faculty, staff, students, parents, the whole family. You want to bring the kids, that's fine. This is a family event. So just know this is not a one-time deal that you have access to the board. Anytime we're in session, we have public comment, you're free to please participate. Just not once. We want to keep you engaged. You're the resource. You're the people on the ground. That's where you get the best intelligence. And you know what? In companies, the people closest to the problem usually have the solution. So, and trust us, please, that's one of the reasons why we're here. So keep the communication lines open with us, is what I want to say. Thank you. Please.
So I'd like to go back to the above and beyond aspect of this whole new grading system. I feel like there are some teachers that aren't exactly telling their students what they can do to get above and beyond or a 4. In my world studies class last semester, for most of our summatives, my teacher would give us the expectations for a 3, and then there'd be a class discussion for what can you do to get a 4, how can you go above and beyond to show you fully understand this and can bring in outside information or why something happened to explain your knowledge and to get a 4. And I feel like that would be something that would be beneficial throughout other classes, making sure that teachers are explaining to their students and giving them opportunities to be able to get a 4 and understand how to do that.
Guys, do we have any other people who want to speak? I don't want to hold people up more than we are.
Can I just thank all of you? The only reason the adults are here, the teachers, the board, are because of you kids. Our schools are to educate kids. So please continue to communicate with us. You have great representation on the board. Mary is wonderful. Dodie did a great job. It really is super. And I'm lucky, I'm retired. If there's ever a time that you would like a board member or any board member to come, I certainly will try to make any meeting, any questions you have. I would be glad to come and listen to you, answer any questions I can, because you are the ones that really count right here. It's your education. You are the ones that need to get as much as you can out of what we offer. I know we have outstanding teachers, but please keep the communication lines open. You kids have been so articulate and so helpful to identifying some of the problems we're having. Hopefully we can work on some of these and improve it. And to the teachers that spoke up, thank you. I know it's not always easy, especially in a crowd like this, but thank you so much, because we are all in this boat together.
And going to what the one teacher said, I'm sure there's not a person up here who intended for it to sound like we were talking down to you. So if it did, I apologize, because it would never be our intent. To be very honest with you, I wish I had been as sharp as you guys are when I was your age. You know, you look back and you say, I could have made more of that experience. I could have done better. And most of you seem to be maximizing your potential, and that's such an encouragement. That's, again, why we're on the board. And when we see those of you who are really making the best of it, I can't even tell you what an encouragement it is, how much it makes it worth. You can't believe how many hours we spent at the school board. And it wouldn't be worth it if we didn't hope that somewhere in all of that effort there was some benefit to, as she said, to the students. Because that's the only reason to have a board, is to make it better for you guys. So thank you very much.
I'd also like to thank you. I took almost 6 pages of notes. This is invaluable. And I have a homework assignment, which I think you call informative for you before you go. AP Government had an election here, so it was in the paper. It was an article in the paper. And when you have an election, you give out ballots and you account for all of them. If you do the arithmetic, there's 21 ballots that were lost. So I challenge you to figure out why the Telegraph, because you had 258 ballots on the Republican side, and there were 21 of those that are unaccounted for.
I think it was a dimple chat.
That was
A dimple chat.
Dimple chat.
Well, sure, or correct the Telegraph.
As the one who was helping to read all that, we had some ballots that were invalidated.
Oh.
So there was some mix-up with some of those kinds of things. I don't know if there's something more you
No, I did the arithmetic, and it says like